4,000 years ago, along the upper reaches of the Yellow River, a Bronze Age farming community built a settlement called Lajia. On an ordinary afternoon, the ground gave way. A violent mud flow, perhaps triggered by an earthquake, poured down the gullies and swallowed the village in minutes. Decades later, archaeologists dug into the site and found a scene frozen in time. They uncovered dozens of skeletons huddled against the walls of collapsed houses, some shielding children, leading people to call Lajia the Pompeii of China. On the floor of one ruined house, sealed beneath a thick layer of red clay, sat a single earthenware bowl. It had tipped upside down as the settlement fell, creating a tiny, airtight vacuum. The rapid burial that destroyed the Lajia people simultaneously created a perfect time capsule, preserving their final moments right down to the food on their tables. When the excavation team lifted that bowl, they found a tangle of long, thin, yellowish strands. They were looking at noodles, preserved in the dark for 40 centuries. The global history of pasta is intensely contested, but this bowl pushed the timeline of the noodle back by roughly 2,000 years, long before any written records existed. The researchers were surprised by the ingredients. These ancient noodles were not made from sophisticated wheat, but from millet, a tough, fast-growing survival crop cultivated on the dry northern terraces. To understand why that poses a culinary problem, look at a modern hand-pulled noodle. A cook can stretch and fold a lump of dough until it becomes 100 separate elastic strands. This stretchy protein network, gluten, makes elasticity possible. Kneading wheat flour links these strands, binding dough so it pulls thin without snapping. But millet has zero gluten. Mixing its flour yields a crumbly paste that falls apart instantly when pulled. So how did a Bronze Age cook turn a gluten-free grain into half-meter-long strands thinner than a chopstick? They were working with a material that defies the mechanical rules of dough. A 2005 paper in the journal Nature provided a starting point. Researchers analyzed the bowl and identified a highly specific blend of two grains, broomcorn and foxtail millet, combined to help the mixture hold together. The process begins at the stone mill. Crushing the grain against a flat quern into a coarse meal requires intense physical effort, meaning a single bowl of this food represented serious labor. A modern cook's natural instinct is to treat this meal like standard dough. You add water, mix it, and try to knead it. It cracks almost immediately. When you attempt to roll it between your palms, the mixture shatters into stubby, stubborn fragments of millet gravel instead of lengthening. Pulling or stretching noodles is a modern assumption. To achieve the elegant strands resting in that ancient bowl, the Lajia cooks had to be using an entirely different culinary technology. The solution relies on a different chemical reaction, starch gelatinization. This animation demonstrates what happens when you introduce excess water and let the batter rest. The dry starch cells absorb the moisture, swell in size, and grip one another to form a thick matrix. That wet paste requires you to stop trying to stretch the dough through the air. Instead, the method relies on heavy, downward pressure. By forcefully extruding the wet batter through a perforated mold directly into boiling water, the starches cook and set instantly before falling apart. The resulting strands are rough around the edges and lack the smooth elasticity of modern pasta, but they hold together as continuous ribbons. Abandoning the rules we associate with wheat reveals the architectural capability of a grain that modern cooks dismiss as impossible to shape. Eaten the way a Lajia family likely prepared them, in a simple, savory broth, these millet noodles present a highly distinct profile. They are fragile. The texture is soft, prone to breaking in the spoon, and grainy on the tongue. They carry a mild, earthy sweetness that lacks the firm bite of modern lammion. That austerity makes sense. This dish was not designed for a royal banquet. It was designed to efficiently feed farmers surviving harsh winters and short growing seasons. It takes a modern kitchen multiple failed attempts just to coax a single strand out of this grain, yet these Bronze Age farmers turned it into a daily meal. The oldest noodles we can physically hold are a display of human resourcefulness. They are a clever technique carried across 4 millennia by the meal a village never got to finish.